everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. If you jump on here live here on this Sunday evening, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. Down below, make sure to give the video a like, a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so and share the video on all social media platforms. Tonight I want to talk some college football, some college football, and some college football. So if you have any thoughts on, college football, please feel free to let me know. Another good weekend in the world of college football. Now, of course, now that we're starting games on Tuesday, you can't really call it a weekend because you're having games on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I guess you could call it more like a good week of college football because they're playing now 5 of the 7 days. There wasn't a lot of what you call upsets. Maybe a couple games that are minor upsets, but nothing, major, but still a good weekend. And I was talking to somebody at church this morning, and we were talking about, the playoffs. And I told him that, now that my team has, no chance at all of going, I want to see some new blood. I'd like to see a playoff where it's not just the same old, same old. Now, of course, you're going to have some of the same teams. There's no way you're going to get 12 new teams, but just to have a playoff where it's some new teams, because there's a chance this year that if the group of 5 winner is somebody like Memphis or South Florida or Navy, it'll be their first time. There's a chance that Vanderbilt gets in, be their first time. Right now, it's looking like Georgia Tech has a pretty good chance to get in. It'll be their first time. Hey there, Daniel. Glad to have you here. Texas Tech right now looks like they got a pretty good shot to get in. It'll be their first time. So to have a playoff where you got 4 or 5 new teams, to me, that's what you need. Hey there, Reese. Hopefully I'm saying your name correctly. Glad to have you here. And Daniel and Reese, I think it's the first time I've seen y'all's names in the comment section. If it is y'all's first time being here for whatever reason, y'all decided to stop by the channel tonight, thank you for doing so. Feel free to give the video a like, a thumbs up, and if you have not subscribed, please do so and share the video on all social media platforms. What you need, though, is if that happens, you need people to watch, because what's happened in the past, not necessarily in the playoff era, but say national championship games. If the championship game comes around and it's 2 teams that people have either no knowledge of or very small knowledge of, well, they decide they're not going to watch because it's 2 teams they know nothing about. So they don't watch. So then the national championship game gets bad ratings. Well, then they come back and say, well, it's bad ratings because it was teams nobody's heard of. But then when it's teams you've heard of, people say, well, I'm tired of the same old, same old. Well, you can't have it both ways. Hey there, Gabby. Glad to have you here. You can't complain about it being the same teams all the time, but then when it's new teams, not watch. So if by some chance, if the national championship game was Indiana and Vanderbilt, or Texas Tech and Vanderbilt, or Texas Tech and Memphis, you need to watch that, because that's a chance that you've got a game with new blood. So you can't complain about wanting new blood, and then when you get new blood, not watch. You can't have it both ways. But as far as yesterday goes, I'm not really going to talk about the games from Tuesday through Friday, because, yeah, we had games all 4 days, but there really wasn't any game this week in my opinion, Tuesday through Friday that anybody really cares about. And Reese again, glad to have you here, man. I'm glad you are here. Indiana beats UCLA 56-6, and that was a game that a month ago looked like a blowout. Then UCLA fired Deshaun Foster, and they were 3-0, so it looked like they had turned the corner. And then yesterday they run into a buzzsaw, and Indiana has 0 5-star players. So to see them either be number 1 or number 2 in the country with no 5-star players, you have to say that I think it's pretty clear that they're the best coached team in the country right now. Not to say they're going to win the national championship, but to be as good as they are with 0 5-star players, I think it's pretty clear that Cignetti's doing a fantastic job. Hey there, Piper. Glad to have you here on this Sunday evening. Texas A&M defeats LSU 49-25, and to me right now it's pretty clear that A&M is the best team in the SEC. Not saying they're going to win the conference, but I haven't been impressed with Georgia. I haven't been impressed with Ole Miss. Oklahoma, to me, looks like an average team at best. Vanderbilt has their flaws. Missouri has their flaws. To me, Texas A&M is the best team in that conference right now. They're the only team that I watch and say, you know what? I think they're the only team in that conference, as we sit here right now in late October, that has a legit shot to win the national championship. I don't think anybody else in that conference does, but I think A&M does. Alabama beats South Carolina 29-22, and I still don't think Alabama as a whole is a good football team, but Ty Simpson is playing great. Without Ty Simpson, Alabama's probably where they were last year, 5-3, somewhere along in there, because I don't think their team as a whole is any better than last year's team. But Simpson is definitely carrying that team, and if they keep playing the way they're playing right now, he'll have a pretty good shot to win the Heisman, because there hasn't really been any player that stands out right now that's been by far and away the best player in the country. But since he plays for Alabama and he's doing really good and they're winning, if they keep winning, he has a legit shot to win it. But you got to wonder, if Ty Simpson's this good, which he has been, and Jalen Milroe was terrible last year, why didn't we see Simpson last year? Because last year, Milroe was slightly above absolute garbage. So why didn't we see Simpson last year? Oregon looked like they had an amazing offense a couple of weeks ago. Well, now the last couple of weeks has looked average at best. They beat a awful Wisconsin team 21-7. Georgia Tech beat Syracuse 41-6. Hey there, Austin. Glad to have you here. And Gabby, I think it's your first time here on the channel. If it is, whatever reason made you stop by, really appreciate it. Feel free to give the video a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed. Ole Miss defeats Oklahoma 34-26. I'm doing fantastic, Austin. Hopefully you are as well. I still don't know if Brent Venables is the answer at Oklahoma, because I know they want to win and they don't accept a lot of 8-4 type seasons, and that's probably about what they're going to do again this year. But the one thing that's holding him back right now is that every time he plays Texas, his team looks awful. And that's the team they hate the most. So when you can't beat them, it kind of holds you back. It's kind of like Ohio State fans. They wanted Ryan Day gone last year because he lost to Michigan again. But then he won the national championship, so it pretty much gave him a free year. Now, if November comes around and Ohio State loses to Michigan again, then there'll be people wanting him gone. But until Brent Venables does something at Oklahoma, their fans are not going to accept them losing to Texas every year. And it's not just if they lose to Texas. I mean, they get manhandled every year, and Texas this year is just not good. I mean, they struggled against Kentucky. They struggled yesterday against Mississippi State, but yet when they played Oklahoma, they looked like the best team in the country, and Oklahoma looks like the worst team in the country. And Sooner fans are not going to accept that. And I have not watched it yet. Austin, probably tomorrow when I get around to watching it. Miami beat Stanford 42-7, so a great bounce back win. I know Stanford's terrible, but a lot of folks are worried about Miami because every year around this time, they seem to, for whatever reason, just fall apart. And then they lost last week. So, of course, a lot of fans are like, oh, no, here we go again. But they looked good last night. But again, Stanford is awful. Vanderbilt beats Missouri 17-10. Remember, in the offseason, Diego Pavia said, I'm coming back to win a national championship. And everybody thought, dude, you're crazy. We're okay with you saying good things about your team, but it's Vanderbilt. But now, as we head into November, it looks like Vanderbilt has a legitimate shot to win the national championship. BYU wins again. They beat Iowa State 41-27. Texas Tech, after suffering their first loss, bounces back against Oklahoma State 42-0. And Oklahoma State is just absolutely, atrocious. It ought to be a law to be able to field a football team that sucks that bad. Virginia continues to be the luckiest team in the country. They beat North Carolina 17-16. Virginia has a legit shot to win the ACC. You look at their schedule, and there's a chance they may not lose a conference game, but they were awful against North Carolina, who was terrible. The game goes into overtime 10-10. In overtime, Virginia scores. North Carolina scores and decides to go for two. They don't get it, so the Cavaliers win by one. But you can't blame North Carolina for going for it. You're one of the worst teams amongst the Power 4 teams. Nobody gives you a chance. You're not supposed to win that game. They're probably going to be underdogs in every game they play the rest of the year. So if you lose, not a big deal. It's expected. So you go for it. No big deal, but they don't get it. So Virginia wins again. Tennessee continues to have major problems on defense. They win, but they beat Kentucky 56-34. Kentucky has not been able to move the ball on anybody all year long. I think they only scored, just past 20 against Toledo back in the opener of the season, and they played Tennessee, and they just march right up and down the field. Tennessee in the past couple of years has looked like they're transitioning from a team that's all about scoring points to a team that actually plays defense. Well, this year they've gone back to old habits because their defense looks absolutely terrible. Just absolutely terrible. Washington beats Illinois 42-25. Austin, I don't watch all the football games, but I watch all the meaningful football games. It's impossible for anybody to watch all the football games, and that's one of my main issues with the playoff system because they let people vote on the 12 best teams, and I don't care who you are and what you say, nobody has enough time to watch 100 games a weekend. You just can't do it. Even if you want to, there's not enough hours in the day. So when you vote on who you think are the best teams, I think it's pretty obvious that you're voting on teams that you haven't watched play because there's just no way you can watch everybody. So you're voting on teams that you haven't watched play. Why are you voting for them? Do you like that team? Is it because they've got a great history? Is it because you know their name? Is it because you know their coach? Either of those are not acceptable excuses. If you haven't watched them play, then you shouldn't be able to say they're one of the 12 best teams. But nobody can watch every game. There's just no possible way. There's not enough hours in the day to watch every single game. Memphis defeats South Florida 34-31. Louisville, after their upset win over the Hurricanes, they don't let it affect them and have a down week. The next week, they beat another awful football team in Boston College, 38-24. Cincinnati continues to shock the world by winning every week. I have no idea what their predicted win total was. I don't look at that a whole lot. I might look at just 4 or 5 random teams before the year starts, but they're not one of the teams I looked at. But I can tell you it probably wasn't any more than, I'm guessing, 5 or 6, because that's about where they were last year. And I don't think anybody thought they improved this much. But they're a one-loss football team. They beat Baylor 41-20. In overtime, Texas defeats Mississippi State 45-38. Texas was down 31-14 going to the fourth quarter and had to make a huge comeback in the fourth quarter to then win in overtime. Houston defeats Arizona State 24-16. Michigan defeats Michigan State 31-20. Nebraska defeats Northwestern 28-21. Rutgers defeats Purdue 27-24. And the game that I would say is a small upset, Wake Forest defeats SMU 13-12. And I say small upset because I think SMU might have been ranked toward the bottom of the top 25. But even if they weren't, I think everybody pretty much assumes, they're going to beat Wake Forest. SMU was undefeated in the ACC last year, and it looked like they were going to go undefeated again this year. And they play Wake Forest. And if you recall, Wake Forest pretty much almost has a whole new football team because they were so bad last year, and then their coach retired and pretty much come out and said that he's retiring because he knows with all the new NIL changes that he just can't hang because Wake Forest can't afford to pay players $3-4 million a year. So he knew he couldn't hang, so he just went ahead and retired. Well, they go out and they get Dicker from Washington State, and Dicker's been a winner everywhere he goes. And he brought the whole offensive line from the Cougars with him. So basically all 5 of their starters come from Washington State on the offensive line. And then, of course, their quarterback has played for 17 football teams, and he's never been any good. And here on the channel, I did a Wake Forest preview, and I said they're going to go 7-5, and nobody had them winning more than like 4 games. I think their over-under win total was 4 or 3.5. And I said they're going to win more than that, for one, because they've got Dicker, who wins everywhere he goes. And if you've got Dicker for a head coach, you're going to win. And for 2, there was some teams on their schedule that people thought they were going to lose. And I thought, no, they'll win that because that team's not going to be as good as expected. And right now, it looks like I may have been wrong on Wake Forest in a good way. It looks like they might win more than 7 games, but they're definitely exceeding expectations. Kansas State beats one of their arch rivals, Kansas, 42-17. Auburn beats Arkansas 33-24, and it looks like Auburn has decided to make a quarterback change, which is good because Jackson Arnold is terrible. Austin, I've got another show coming up this upcoming Saturday, and I talked about Jackson Arnold before the season started. There was a lot of rumors going around that every day in practice, Hugh Freeze did something there at the end of practice that would make Jackson Arnold look good. He would design some play, call some play that made Jackson Arnold feel good and look good because Jackson Arnold was having all kinds of confidence issues. So Hugh Freeze knew, hey, man, if he's my quarterback and he has confidence issues, it's going to be a long season because your quarterback loses confidence. There's a problem. So he was doing things to make Jackson Arnold feel good and look good in practice. I think all that's true, and I can see why Jackson would have no confidence because he's not very good. But knowing he's not very good, why do you wait till November to make a change? I mean, he's just not very good. And no, Austin SWA was last night, so next weekend is not SWA. Iowa beats Minnesota 41-3. Those two teams battle for the big oaken bucket. It's usually a good football game. I don't know what happened to Minnesota yesterday, but that game was over by the end of the first quarter. Hey there, Jason. I'm doing absolutely fantastic, and I hope you are as well. And thank you for being here. If it's your first time here, Jason, whatever reason made you stop by the channel tonight, thank you for doing so. Feel free to give the video a like, a thumbs up, and if you have not subscribed, please do so. And again, thank you for being here. Pittsburgh beats NC State 53-34. Pittsburgh had that bad loss to West Virginia, which looks worse as the year goes on because the Mountaineers are not very good. But other than that, Pittsburgh's actually been a pretty solid football team this year. I thought it was your first time, Jason. Appreciate you being here tonight. I'm talking college football, but I also talk NFL. I talk NASCAR. We talk baseball, college and pro, basketball, college and pro, talk wrestling. You never know what you'll find here on the channel. It's usually just the major sports: football, baseball, basketball, racing, and wrestling. But I have did some top 10 countdowns about boxing, golf, tennis, soccer. So you just never know. Navy defeats Florida Atlantic 42-32. And Utah defeats Colorado 53-7. Now, those are all the games that I think are worth talking about. Of course, there's always, bukus and bukus and bukus of football games. But, there's a lot every weekend that I don't think should even be talked about because you see on the schedule the game and you pretty much know right away what's going to happen. And when that happens, they're not even worth even talking about. You're in Virginia. You're a huge Virginia fan and a huge NASCAR fan. Well, Jason, I'm glad you're here because I try to talk NASCAR once a week. It doesn't always happen once football starts because football is so popular. And then I'm a professional wrestling referee, so I'm always going to talk wrestling, usually at least once a week. So by the time football starts, between college football, the NFL, and not NASCAR, wrestling, that's 3 to 4 days a week that are going to be all football. But I do still try to talk NASCAR at least once a week, but not like I do in the summertime. In the summertime before football starts, I usually try to talk about each race, who won the trucker race, who won the soon to not be Xfinity race, who won the Cup race, who's looking good for the playoffs, what's happening. And then once football starts, my focus shifts to football. So I still talk about, who won each race, but that's generally it. But Jason, if you can get on here and find more NASCAR fans, I'll talk more NASCAR, but I try to talk what the fans want. And it seems like I get more feedback and more subscribers by talking football. So I feel like it's better to talk football and get the views you're getting than talk NASCAR and not get as many views. But if you can get more NASCAR fans on here, I would love to talk more NASCAR, Jason. And I am going to talk about Martinsville coming up probably either tomorrow or Tuesday, one of those 2 days. And Martinsville was a fantastic race, Jason. I talked about Virginia earlier in the video tonight, talking about how lucky they are because it seems like every week, just about, their games come down to the wire. And there's never in history of time, and never will be in history of time, a national championship winner that doesn't have luck on their side. Every team is going to win 2 or 3 games every year by luck. Every team's going to win 2 or 3 games every year where you're like, man, they must have a golden horseshoe in their rear end, because how are they doing that? But Virginia seems like they've done that every game this year, but they're still finding ways to win. And yesterday they win because the Tar Heels try a 2-point conversion. It doesn't work. But you can't blame North Carolina for trying it, because, I mean, they are absolutely terrible. They're probably going to be underdogs in every game they play the rest of the year. I mean, they're a 2-win football team. You play Virginia, that's a game that nobody thinks you have a chance to win. So if you lose the game, nobody cares. They expected that. So to go for two for North Carolina, nothing to lose. So Virginia continues to get lucky. But hey, it's working for them, and they've got a legit shot to win their conference. Can't beat that. And yes, Austin, I do talk basketball. I've already talked a little bit of basketball, but I will talk more and more once college starts, because the NBA started this past week. But NBA, it takes them 97 years to play 82 basketball games, so you can't talk NBA every single day. But the way they stretch their season out, they start the season, and by the time it's over with, I'm a granddad, and I have no kids nowhere near old enough yet to be a granddad. But they just drag their season out way too long, that you just can't talk NBA every day unless it's an NBA channel. And this is not an NBA channel, but my gosh, the NBA, college football will have a season, have an entire off season, have summer camp, have their next season. NBA still at the All-Star break. They just drag their season out way, way, way too long. NBA should start at Christmas time and then wrap up early June. There's no reason to take this long to play 80 basketball games. That is so dumb. But they do it because people watch. But it drags the season out way too much. I like the NBA, Jason, but first of all, they put way too many teams in the playoffs. So you basically water down your regular season, because almost everybody in the league makes the playoffs. Now, my team don't make it because they're absolutely terrible. But if you're halfway decent in the NBA, you're in the playoffs. It's kind of like kids playing sports nowadays. Everybody wins a trophy. Well, if you're in the NBA, everybody goes to the playoffs. So there's no reason to even worry about the regular season, because it doesn't matter. They make the regular season last way too long. The games are meaningless because everybody goes to the playoffs. And there's just no point in even worrying about the NBA until at least February, because this early in the season you could lose every game and still go to the playoffs, because everybody makes playoffs. And hey there, yo girl, glad to have you here. So any more thoughts on yesterday's college football? Please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. When you clean out a vacuum cleaner, you become a vacuum cleaner. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of three. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.